Welcome to the How to Be Moderately Successful podcast. I'm your host, Mike Scott, and I'm also the co-founder and CEO of Nona Digital. In this show, we talk about how to build better fintech products, better businesses, and how to work on yourself to be as effective as possible in your life. We get a lot of messages to thank us and our guests for the content that we put out, which I can only assume means you're getting value, and that's great. But if you'd like to support us, the best way you can do that is to give us a rating and a review. And it's actually not easy to do that. So we set up a link to make it easier. Just go to ratethispodcast.com/how to be moderately successful. We'll drop this in the show notes too. And thanks in advance for the 5-star ratings. Today's episode is sponsored by ourselves, Nona Digital. Building a fintech business is difficult. And building the software that enables that business, that scales, and that your users love is very difficult. In today's hyper-competitive environment, getting your software built right really does matter. But you also need to focus on building your business, your team, closing your next deal, and making the impact that you want to make. And this is where we can help. We'll take away just some of your stress by making sure that your product is designed and built at the highest standards and by people that really care. We're small enough so that we're always close to the principles, but big enough to be able to deliver at the highest standards consistently without key people dependencies. We've got deep expertise in fintech and particularly in blockchain application development. So if you want to accelerate your fintech project with a team of experts that really care and that have a great track record, we'd love to hear from you. Head over to our site, nona.digital, to book a call directly with one of the principals, or just follow any of the contacts in the show notes. We're actively hiring senior developers and technical leads and are offering a very tasty reward for any referrals. So if you know any senior developers and that I have to fight Sean for, please send them my way. And now onto the show. Today, my guest is Sean Saunders from Revix. Sean's passion in finance began with a degree in finance and economics, and then he went on to do his CFA qualification, which is not an easy test at all. For those of you that don't know, CFA is not actually graded on the marks, but more the top percentage of the candidates in the year. So you could theoretically get 99% and still fail. It's a very tough thing to get. Sean, who is not even 30 years old, in fact, self-described as, I think, 29 and 1/4, started his career with a few internships, one of which was with Merrill Lynch, and founded his first of many businesses in 2012. This one was in the education administration space. He then went on through a number of finance-focused positions, ranging from equity trading to portfolio management, and then eventually onto a VC analyst position with Knife Capital in South Africa, who I happen to know very well and I respect. It was at Knife Capital that Sean had his aha moment that led him to co-founding Revix in 2018, where he is now the CEO and doing some great things. Revix is a platform that provides hassle-free, diversified cryptocurrency investing. And Sean has led the team to a human count of about 25, a monthly recurring revenue of around 140,000 US, with the last few months seeing 50% month-on-month growth. They've raised around $4.1 million from a range of investors, and they are sure to be a fintech company to keep an eye on. Sean is super smart, and in my conversations leading up to this, I was most impressed by his passion and commitment to finance, and I think fintech specifically. And I'm sure we're going to get some great value from today's conversation. Welcome, Sean. Thanks for making the time. It's great to have you.
Hey, Mike. What an introduction. Wow. I feel flattered, completely flattered. Thanks. I'm very happy to be here.
No worries. Yeah, great to have you. So let's start with, I guess, what got you to Revix. So I'm always really interested to know, businesses don't just arrive. You got to have ideas. You've got to have pain points. You've got to have experiences that generally lead you to going, I need this thing to exist in the world. I want this thing to exist in the world. So just talk me through in sort of point form or succinctly, what got you from sort of finishing school and starting to study finance to the point where you were like, I'm actually going to drop a pretty lucrative career to build this thing and I have no idea if it's going to work. How did you get there?
There was, I guess, two developments that occurred in my life. I suppose the one was, I guess, the more traditional, I studied finance. I've been obsessed with fintech and automated finance, if I can call it that now, for a long time. I got actively involved in the ETF industry, sort of at the emergence of active and passive ETFs. So I did my dissertation on that. I then worked for a bunch of high net worth individuals, built portfolios for them that focused on thematic based investments. They wanted to get exposure to crypto early on. And this all just sort of came together to create this opportunity really where I was like, well, I think there should be some sort of a diversified product in the crypto space. And I think I know how to build that. So that was the one side of it, which is sort of was a more linear, I guess, sort of approach to starting Revix. And then the other thing, which I thought was a little bit more out of the box and different, is, as a financial analyst, you spend a lot of time valuing companies. And the way that you generally value a company is you look at its future forecast cash flows and you discount them back. So a discounted cash flow model is quite a common way to value any profitable business. And I did that same exercise with myself. And I looked at my forward, like hardcore capitalist here, but I looked at my projected earnings over the next 50 years. And I saw my current value, so my value if I was to stay in corporate. And I was not happy with that number. And that was the moment where I was like, I actually have to jump into a startup. Like, there's no decision here. So that was the less traditional way. So I mean, that's.
So it was almost. I want to jump into that because I love that. So you almost viewed yourself. The esoteric side of me hates that I'm saying this, but I also love it. The capitalist side of me loves this. It's like, so you viewed yourself almost as a business, as an income generating asset. And you said, cool, I've got that channel that gives me this return. But what I'm foregoing by doing that is the opportunity cost of this route, which could be exponentially higher. Is that literally how you viewed this?
Well, I think that's the one side of it, right? Which is definitely to say, like, you can make far more money. I mean, if you, again, coming from studied finance, obviously, like the game here is to make money. But if you're just wanting to make money, then the entrepreneurship route is the way that you sort of have to go, unless you come from a very privileged background or something like that. The other side of this is, building a business is awesome. It is the most fun you can ever have, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, you're more stressed than you can ever be stressed. I mean, it's an intense sort of experience, but I wouldn't change a single thing. I've seen psychiatrists over this journey because of how stressed I've been. And, it's like when you see that dad or that mom that is absolutely exhausted with their 3 kids, and you ask them, are you happy? And they go yes, I'm happy. But you can see that they're exhausted and they are just that's me right now. Yeah.
So look, I mean, you look pretty healthy. You look pretty, you look in good nick. So you don't look too stressed. But I guess my question, the reason why I'm saying that is because, so in fact, we've actually had a guest on the show. His name is Fred Shabester. He's on the Australian rich list. I think he's worth about $250 million. He's incredibly successful. He's super high intensity and energy and amazingly smart. And he quite publicly talks about the fact that he absolutely thinks we should burn ourselves out often. He openly says this. He's like, if you're not burning yourself out, you're not actually working hard enough, in his opinion. He's like, in his words, he's like, I experience burnout quite often. And I like to do that. And then I reset and then I come back at that. I'm not sure I agree with that personally, but I fully get where he's coming from. He's like, if you want to do extraordinary things, you've got to be prepared to do the extraordinary, which usually comes at a cost. What is at 29 and a quarter years, which I love. Sean, to the listeners, Sean doesn't describe himself as 29. He's 20. I'm 29 and a quarter, Mike, which I absolutely love. So at 29 and a quarter, what is your view to burnout? And what is your view to working to that point that's actually not healthy physically? How do you think about that?
Well, it's all a mental game, right? So you believe that you're at the point of burnout. And yes, you could be working super long hours, but if you actually look at when people burn out, some people burn out with a normal 9 to 5 and they've got external stress. Some people burn out, they're working 24 hours a day, right? And they're not sleeping. So it seems to be relative for everyone. So for me, it really is this idea of how do you feel? How do you believe you feel, right? So objectively and subjectively, you're probably, in 2 different spaces. I think you need to be able to manage that. And it's sort of managing your thoughts around this as well, because the mind is everything. Here's a Buddha quote, what you think you become. And I do believe that, when I'm saying to myself, hell, I'm stressed, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Yeah. And you're putting the pressure on yourself, you feel like your entire world's there's this, I don't know, this mountain sitting on your back. And that then leads you to get, to this point of burnout. But every single time I get near that, it's not a case of going away for 2 weeks. I haven't had a holiday in 4 years. I don't think I need a holiday right now. For me, it's just a case of I love doing what I do, right? And I want to be stressed. And the stress that I have today, I'm really grateful for. So it's being able to sort of reframe whatever that stress is to being more positive, I suppose. Again, so much easier said than done. So much easier said than done. But definitely something, in my opinion, on how you have to handle it. So I kind of agree with that more than not, in that you should take yourself closer to burnout, but obviously just being very aware. And I think that's actually I'm jumping around my thoughts here, but that's another point that one of my mentors said to me, which he said, the difference between a good entrepreneur and a great entrepreneur is awareness. So being aware of yourself and aware of where, your thoughts, your feelings, et cetera, et cetera.
I love that. And it reminds me of, I think I might have even spoken to you about this. One of my favorite people to read, thought leaders in the world is Naval Ravikant. And he just condenses so much wisdom into like a few lines. And one of the things he speaks about is he speaks about himself. And he's obviously mega successful. I mean, if he's not a billionaire, he's pretty close to it. And he speaks about the way he works. And he's just quite objectively, without an ego, I don't think, he speaks about himself and he says, the reason no one's going to be better than me at what I do is because I don't view what I'm doing as work at all. When I'm doing it, I am happy. I am playing. I choose to do this. I don't have to do it. I love it. I get energized. So you'll never beat me because I'm not trying. I'm not working. This is not a chore to me. I am absolutely thriving when I'm doing this stuff. And you can't beat that, right? And what that really is, I mean, he doesn't say this, but my interpretation of that is the only difference is his mindset to it. Most of us are sort of wired to go, oh, when I'm making money, I am working. But not actually. If you're doing what you genuinely love, and you're making money from it, you're not actually working. You're actually in your area of flow or your area of genius. And that's energizing. That doesn't burn you up. That lifts you up. And I can tell from the few times we've spoken and just this conversation that you're definitely in that world. But we digress, but it's a good digression. Mm-hmm. I want to bring it back a little bit. So you have these sort of these moments and you start this business, Revix. What does Revix look like today? Describe to me what it does, what the vision is, what the business looks like, where you think you're going to be in a year. Just talk to me about how you view Revix today.
Yeah, sure. So the Revix of today is a crypto platform, which is going to be different from the Revix of tomorrow. And the crypto platform really is sort of the easiest portal to use online, right? So you've got a whole host of cryptocurrency platforms that allow you to trade and invest in crypto. What we've done is we've said, listen, if you don't understand what Bitcoin is, or what the crypto space is all about, like, let's give you a way to get a little bit of exposure to the space in an effortless way, so that you're able to get your hands a little wet, right? So like you need to be able to, or get your hands dirty is probably a better term there. So you should be able to, I guess, understand a little bit more about how blockchain works, and you kind of dip your toes in the water, right? And then from there, we said, well, the best way to probably invest in this market is to rather own a diversified portfolio of cryptocurrencies rather than just a single coin, right? So I think if you went to the stock market, very seldom would you go and just buy a single company. Maybe you'd buy Apple or buy Alphabet or another stock, but generally speaking, you'd own a diversified portfolio. And our thesis with Revix was, listen, crypto is going to be a big asset class. It's going to emerge, and this is a nascent asset class as well, where there's a lot of assets that are chopping and changing. There's new developments every single day. I mean, like 2 years in the crypto space is like 40 years in the stock market. And it's probably more important than ever, actually, to diversify in a nascent industry, right? So that's really where our bundles come in. So we've got these 3 different crypto bundles. The flagship product we offer is our top 10 bundle. And what this allows you to do is to get exposure to the top 10 cryptocurrencies as measured by market cap. And on a monthly basis, we'll automatically update your bundle. So just like if you were investing in, say, the S&P 500 or the JSE Top 40, we would make sure that your bundle's tracking the market. So if a cryptocurrency declines in value really rapidly and moves out of the top 10, we'd remove it from the bundle and replace it with another asset that's increased in value. So that's the core offering of what we have today. I mean, we've got quite a few employees. We've got 24 employees at this point in time. We're growing quite quickly. Every single second week, there's a new face, which is awesome. It's sort of what you live for as well. And as you mentioned earlier on, we're growing about 50% month on month, which is just nuts. So it's been quite the ride.
So just something that jumped to mind. Are you familiar with a company called Economy?
Yes, very familiar.
So how does it? Yeah. So I mean, I remember Economy from a long time ago, and they had some. What I understood they were trying to do was come to us investing in index fund, but these index funds are not actually our funds. You as the individual, Mike, Sean, can come onto our platform and create this bundle, and then I assume you get a clip on the ticket for everyone doing this. But it is an index fund. You have no idea who's doing this, and you have no idea what their capability is. How do you guys differ to a company like Economy? And I don't know much about them, but I think their offering is similar. So like, what's different about Revix to something like Economy?
So Economy's provided this marketplace that allows you to invest in other people's funds, air commas. With Revix, you're not investing in anyone else's fund. You're buying the top 10 cryptocurrencies. So our technology is quite unique in that we use something called direct indexing. So if you have a lot of money, so if you have over, let's say, $20 million, and this is actually, from my past experience as well, and if you have $20 million and you want to own the S&P 500, but you don't want to buy an ETF and pay a small fee every single year, you can actually buy the underlying companies within that S&P 500. And that approach is called direct indexing. And we have applied that exact same approach with crypto. The difference is that in the traditional markets, so in the stock markets and all the rest, you don't get fractional ownership of all the shares just yet. I mean, the fractional ownership market where you can spend, a couple cents on a share, it's coming, but it's still not there yet. So in crypto, you can buy a fraction of a cryptocurrency, right? You can buy with Bitcoin to 8 decimal points, et cetera, et cetera. So that allowed us then to offer our bundles in the way that you actually own the underlying assets. So you buy a top 10, you actually own the underlying assets. With Economy, you would be investing into other funds or into other baskets of cryptocurrencies that people have put together. Now, I know from building Revix that managing these products and the technology behind them is incredibly complicated. You need very smart people working on these projects. And for me, thinking about some of these funds, and not to knock Economy at all, I think Economy is a great platform, but to think about some of the funds that exist on Economy and the lack of transparency that I think you have with some of them, for me, it's just that I don't feel too comfortable about that. I know that if you with Revix, you're actually owning the underlying assets, you'll perfectly track those underlying assets. It's literally as simple as that. With Economy, there's how exactly are they doing the trading, how they're doing rebalancing, because it's also actively managed, right? You'll have a lot of people that will try to be the fund manager and try to outperform the market, and then they take really high performance fees if they do. So there's a few differences.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for the explanation. Makes a lot of sense. And is one of the reasons that you guys are doing that? Is it around regulation and compliance and reporting? Like, is it a different legal form of ownership the way that you guys are doing it, with actual, buying it through a, for lack of a better term, vehicle, but you have real underlying ownership of the digital asset? Or was it purely because of transparency reasons, where, as you said, like something like Economy, and not to knock Economy, they have a great platform, but you're right, you're effectively investing in the ability of you're investing in someone else's ability that you don't actually even know who they are. So there's a middleman there, which is maybe not great. You guys are sort of direct underlying ownership. I guess my question is there a regulatory advantage to doing it the way you're doing it?
The regulatory side of things is tricky because there isn't any regulation in South Africa just yet, which I would love there to be regulation so that we can actually adhere to some regulatory.
So you know what to do, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's not really for that purpose. It's actually from a cost perspective, because if you are buying the underlying assets, right, there's no fund management fees. There's no portfolio management fees. There's no ridiculous custody fees. And that's a custody fee that's on top of the actual asset custody. You're talking about having a custodian that will, come in to check actually that are these assets there. Like, this can all happen digitally, right? I mean, at the end of the day, crypto is meant to be this digital asset class. So when our audits take place, our audits with both our accounting partners and our, tech partners and all the rest, the assets are there. You can see it digitally. You don't need to have, this old school inventory count, which is, believe it or not, still a requirement of funds. So the reason we decided to take this bundling approach, which is actually, I'll finance nerd out here a little bit, but if you're looking at execution when it comes to making a purchase or making a sale, really what our bundles are is an execution instruction. So you'll say, I want to buy the top 10 cryptocurrencies. We'll have an instruction that'll go out and say, listen, buy the top 10 cryptocurrencies. And then another instruction that comes along with that initial instruction to say, okay, for this customer, every single month, rebalance that bundle, so that you're tracking the market. And what we would like to do over the longer term is take this exact same direct indexing technology and apply it to traditional stocks and funds. Because there's no reason, when you've got fractionalization of shares, why you can't take what we've built and apply it to shares as well.
Yeah, very, very smart. And it makes perfect sense. So look, you guys are doing something right. Your month-on-month growth is awesome at 50%. Why do you think it's working? Why do you think people are coming to use your platform? You had a hypothesis, you've proven the hypothesis, people will use this when we build it like that. Why do you think people are using you over the other options that are also very easy to use, right? But people are obviously seeing something in what you're building. What do you think they're seeing? Because what I'm hearing is, look, we've made it simpler, but it's not difficult to use a lot of these other apps. So that's not the reason. But I'm also hearing we're doing things in a different way in terms of, more direct, lower cost, in a way that it's simpler, but it still requires a level of sophistication, right? People, a lot of people won't even understand what it means to have the top 10 by market cap in a basket. Already you've lost 90% of people when you even talk like that. So what's your theory, or maybe you even know this information? Why are people using your app? Why are you having this growth? Why is it being received so well from the market? What do you think the reason is?
Oh, there's loads of reasons, but I think firstly, let's not discount the fact that you've seen crypto blow up in the way that it's blown up, right? So great timing. So I'm the first to admit that it's been just a great time to be in crypto. On top of that, we've got the best customer service out there. and we've prioritized it. We've hired a customer service team. We've trained a customer service team that are phenomenal. Like our response time is minutes instead of days. And I think that's one of the big pain points that, if you think about your relationship with your bank, you probably hate your bank, and rightfully so, they suck. And the reason that they suck is that you go into a branch, you wait an hour, you try to call someone, you wait an hour. It's just a terrible user experience always. And if you look at a lot of other crypto platforms or just investment platforms in general, their response times and their customer service in general is pretty average. Like they don't really care about you, and it becomes a numbers game. And with us, we've really focused on that. So that then leads into happier customers referring friends. And we're currently seeing about 20% of our customers come through referrals, which is an insane amount. So we've got a rewards program where both the person that refers somebody else as well as the person that was referred get a little reward if they join Revix. And I mean, it's literally taken off far greater than what we expected. It's just been a lot bigger and more successful.
Yeah, you make it sound simple. It's. I mean, I guess it is simple. It's not easy, right? So it like the moving parts are actually pretty simple. Getting it right and executing is not easy. So, Sean, I'm kind of interested to know. I don't know how unique it is, but it's certainly I haven't come across many VC analysts stepping across the table to become a target company for a VC, right? So basically to go from like a VC analyst to effectively an entrepreneur, right? And what I'm interested in is not so much about that experience, because I guess what's more intriguing to me is, as the CEO of this business, you're making strategic decisions, and what you're doing at the end of the day is you're building something to be of the highest possible value, right? That's what you do. You're creating an entity and you're trying to increase value for the shareholders. What do you think you are doing differently? And maybe that's an unfair question because you can't compare yourself to people who haven't done what you've done. But what do you think you've brought into your CEO world that you maybe wouldn't have brought with you had you not had that VC experience? Like, how are you doing things differently, knowing what you know from your time as a VC?
Oh my word, it's the best thing in the entire world. If you want to start a business, go work at a VC. You see exactly what fails, right? You speak to entrepreneurs and you hear about all their mistakes. And look, don't get me wrong, like I started Revix, there's been so many mistakes since we started. Like, please, I did not tick all the boxes there. But I did sit at Knife working very closely with a lot of businesses and closely with a lot of entrepreneurs, knowing, and I'll just correct you as well, it wasn't a VC analyst that then went over to entrepreneur. It was an entrepreneur that was sitting there as a VC analyst that then went back to being an entrepreneur there. But
it's like a master class in
exactly,
what to do.
Exactly. Yeah. It was like what not to do actually most of the time. But I think just, the simple things, right? Like when you're dealing with a founder and they've run out of cash, right? And I mean, that happened a few times, not necessarily with direct investments at Knife, but other companies they'll be coming looking for money and all the rest. To see how stressed these guys are, to ask them, how are you actually dealing with stress? So it's not actually just the business stuff. It's everything else that goes around that. The other thing is, you want to get the best network possible. Go work as a VC analyst. Like all of a sudden you're meeting remarkable startup founders on a daily basis. I mean, Mike, probably one of the reasons why you created this podcast as well, right? But yeah, you're meeting these really remarkable people on a daily basis. And you're also working with some really smart people as well. So yeah, I think that prepared me a lot. Just, looking at sort of the errors and mistakes that other people made, and also then looking at the successes, right? Being able to actually understand, okay, great, what did you do for this business that made it succeed? And sometimes, you can't replicate it. Other times, just being there every single day in the office, day in, day out, setting the standard. It's those small things which they add up. So that's, I think, just one thing, being at Knife has really helped me.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because, everything you said is, it's bang on, and I resonate a lot with that. And it is absolutely, in part, why we started the podcast, is to be able to have these conversations with great entrepreneurs like you. I'm going to put you on the spot. What is one thing or two things that absolutely have stood out for you through your experience at Knife? And I recognize that you're an entrepreneur, went into Knife, probably got 10 years worth of learning in the 2 years or whatever. But stepping out of Knife, you must have had there are things that I see happening all the time or really often that if we just get those things right or don't make that mistake, we really put ourselves in a much higher percentage of getting this thing right. What would you pick out as like the one or two things that you think founders most commonly get wrong?
Okay, so there's two things. One, I'm going to talk about from personal experience. This won't necessarily be from Knife, but anybody that's listening to this that has started a business or is looking to start a business, please make sure that you've got a co-founder's agreement if you have a co-founder. I started this business with someone, we didn't have a co-founder's agreement. He landed up then wanting to do something else after the first few months of Revix's launch. and it became messy and it wasn't great. It was one of the worst experiences, sort of in the first year or two of Revix. So that would be one bit of advice. I think the other thing, which I think is honestly the most important thing that you can possibly have if you're dealing with any VC or any investor, and it doesn't matter, actually customers across the board, you name it, this is the quality that you should have, and that is being upfront, candid, and honest about everything. So not trying to sugarcoat situations, taking ownership when shit hits the fan. Like, I think it is incredibly important to, I guess, be really honest, right? When something happens that's not favorable, being able to communicate that, sort of setting that standard early on, I think is very important. Like when, a VC speaks to you, they know that your startup's not perfect. Obviously, you want to sell it in the most perfect way, but I do think there's a lot of value in being able to say, listen, this is condition 1, condition 2, condition 3 you must know about. And a VC is going to respect you a lot more when you actually mention those sort of things. So that was one thing when I was at Knife. The best entrepreneurs would be very open and candid about certain things. The other thing is you come to a Series A, which is where we are now, and you say, okay, great. Do we push for profitability or do we push to raise more capital and grow quicker? And you can speak to VCs and you give them your financial forecasts. Now, you know what a VC does when you give them financial forecasts? They're divided by 10. Like, I'm being dead serious. They'll go in and they'll divide it by 4 or divided by 10. When I got financial forecasts literally divided by 10, I was like, would this still make money? But I think that experience for me as well, when I then deal with VCs and they kind of laugh at this, but when I say to them, like, listen, here's our financial model and you're welcome to divide it by 10. It's just like this little, I don't know, like you get a little connection with them where they're like, I know you, like, you being optimistic and all the rest. But I think it's those sort of things which really help as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, to the point that in our business, which isn't even a product business, it's a services business, but one of our 5 core values is communicate often and honestly, no matter what. And it's because through hard experience of getting this wrong often, we've realized that in almost every situation where something's gone wrong, it hasn't been because of the thing or the quality of the work, or it's actually almost come down to, oh, okay, hold on, there was a communication issue there. We didn't communicate enough, or the client didn't communicate enough, or we weren't actually talking about the same thing, or they weren't upfront with us, or we didn't give them this piece of information. Almost every time to fix that is just communication. Talk it out, talk it through, be honest, be prepared to admit your shortfalls. And you're right, VCs are not stupid. Sophisticated investors have seen this all before. You're not going to pull the wool over their eyes, unless you're a con man. So just show them the ugly bits up front. Chances are you'll get bigger respect. So I want to move on a little bit from this theme, and it's more about building the team. So you said you're at about 25 people, growing really quickly. It's a tough hiring market at the moment. You speak about an amazing talent suite, including your services team. You've got very good engineers, I imagine. You've got some hardcore tech that you're building. It's not just about the quality of the tech, but it's the financial elements of the tech that have to work. We speak about this as we build stuff that, we've got a great phrase. I can't remember the exact wording, but basically the way we speak about it is we're well suited to building projects that cannot fail. Right? If you're building something that is like, it doesn't matter if it works or not, whatever, go to the other guys. If you want to build something that cannot fail, we're a good fit for you. You're building this internally. You're building stuff that can't fail. You're handing people's value. You're handing them money, identity, KYC stuff. Talk to me about your approach to hiring and maintaining and nurturing talent across the board. How do you attract great people? How do you build a team with a culture that I know that you're very proud of? What's your approach to people and talent?
Employees and people, they're the most important thing that you can have in a business, right? And they're the most difficult thing to find. I mean, you can outsource great talent. I mean, Nona's obviously, very well known in the space. But when you need to build your internal team, finding those people, you can go through a recruitment agency if you want. You can go out into your own personal network, but it's damn hard. I think finding those first few employees, those key employees that are going to be with you over the long haul, feels like it has to be serendipity more than anything. It's not easy. But we've used everything from recruitment agencies. Every time I use a recruitment agency, like a part of me dies just because of the really high fee that you have to pay. I'm sure you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Let's not talk about that.
Yeah. So we've used that. We've actually got some great hires through recruitment agencies though. So sometimes it's totally worth it. On the other side of it, you've sort of got to build that culture internally. You've got to have a company where people are saying good things about you, where they feel pumped. They want to wear the Revix t-shirt to the office. They want to talk about you at parties. Just this weekend, actually, I had 2 people that came up to me and said, listen, are you looking for a content writer? And are you looking for a motions graphic designer and all these, and it's just, that's how it happens. And I feel that sort of organic talent acquisition, if you want to call it that, or the ability to get in contact with people that way, that's the most valuable way to sort of grow a team. And it's like we're getting to that point now. I'm sure Nona's somewhere there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We sort of at a point where we have two marketing streams, right? You've got the marketing stream to get customers and users in your case. And then there's another marketing stream to attract amazing talent, because it's very different. Our customers don't necessarily care about what it's like to work at Nona, yet we care extremely deeply about it. And in fact, if you go to our website, the video that we showcase is far more about what it's like to work at Nona than what it's like to work with Nona as a partner. And you're absolutely right, because when you acknowledge in a business that people genuinely are the most important thing, you need to show that, right? You need to show that in your marketing efforts and your communication and how you're representing the business. And I'm not surprised you see that, because you're a tech company, and almost every business is a tech company now. But tech is still just people doing stuff with other people and building stuff for and with other people. Sean, I want to change gears completely now. And to the non-South African listeners, I apologize because this is not very relevant. But to the South African listeners, this is very relevant. Talk to me about the challenges and experiences that you have with the exchange controls in South Africa. I mean, anyone who's in South Africa, yeah, I mean, the shaking of your head sort of sums it up, right? Exchange control is tricky in South Africa and quite limiting in many cases. And while it's possible to get money out of South Africa, it's not legal to do it outside of the framework. So you really are very limited, unless you want to go and break the law, which is not a good idea. Talk to me about how you guys are tackling this, because it is not an easy thing to do. And I'd love to hear, if you've solved it, amazing. I don't think you have, but I'd love to hear how you're dealing with it and your experience of it, because we're all in this boat. So talk to me about exchange control in South Africa.
Yeah, so let's just be completely candid. I mean, exchange controls are just like an absolute waste of time, and like the stupidest regulation I think exists out there. I don't think there's anyone that actually disagrees with it. It feels like exchange controls are there because you'd just see a mass depreciation of the rand. So you'd have money just run out of the country so quickly that the Reserve Bank wouldn't be able to actually manage the currency and maintain its stability. So like there's not really too much I can say positive about it, but in terms of us and the way that we've dealt with it, I mean, we've dealt with it with pain and tears in our eyes, because cryptocurrencies are digital assets. They are not meant to exist in any location. When you've got a cryptocurrency public key, that is like the access code, if you want to call that, to that cryptocurrency. That, where does that live? If I think about that public key, or that private key, should I say, and I remember that, that code, does that exist in my mind? Or, if I send it by email, does it exist in the email? Or like, where does this cryptocurrency actually exist? Because, if you have this cryptocurrency in South Africa and then you seem to be exporting it or sending that offshore, from an exchange control standpoint, they'll be like, you're sending it offshore, but it's like, what are you sending offshore? It's digital. It exists everywhere at the same time. And it's this sort of like, you need a framework, you need a regulatory framework in place to actually define the locality of where cryptocurrency exists. So we've been hitting our head on the wall, like, oh God, it feels like forever, trying to deal with this and talk to regulators about this. And it's partly why they haven't actually come up with regulations in South Africa, because there is no way that exchange control and crypto can work together. I mean, the idea of cryptocurrency is a global peer-to-peer monetary system. I mean, I guess look at Ethereum, there's obviously different sort of players in the space. But the idea of having exchange controls is super antiquated. I mean, it's like the exact opposite of globalization. I mean, the free flow of capital, it's like, it just, South Africa wants to be one of the top 50 countries in the, I think the ease of doing business index. And there's no way you're going to get there with exchange controls in place. Like there's as a foreign investor, there's a big red light that comes on every single time they look at a South African business, and they know that, hey, listen, moving my money into the country and out of the country is a nightmare. So I think they should do away with exchange controls, but they're not going to.
And when it comes to crypto, it's just doubly confusing, right? Because you're going to send the regulators into a tailspin, or rather the SARB into a tailspin, because you've got, you might have your X wallet that's stored here, but then where are your servers actually stored? And then your backups, where are those servers domiciled? And your website, where is it hosted? And is it actually, it's actually impossible to say like it is here, because if you're running any kind of tech stack, that's going to be distributed around the world because of where you're hosting on Amazon or wherever it is. So it is a total nightmare. And I think what's probably happening I mean, I'm not in South Africa anymore, and I no longer have those worries too much in my life. But I think what's happening is people are just starting to ignore them. And that's not a good situation. People are just saying, well, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And that's also not a good situation, right? Because a lot of people will get into serious trouble with a lot of the stuff Also, because a lot of the stuff is completely trackable. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, is that they think that cryptocurrency is this untraceable thing. Well, actually, no, it's the reverse. It's completely auditable with a distributed ledger. So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. I saw something the other day around, not quite the same thing, but around financial immigration, and they're loosening some stuff on financial immigration from South Africa. Maybe it's a step towards loosening exchange control. I don't know. But it is tricky. So moving on. When you think about the future of fintech, I mean, you're clearly pretty forward thinking. I don't think you are your typical old school thinking financial professional. I mean, you wouldn't be in a crypto startup if you were. So you're obviously pretty forward thinking. When you think about the future of fintech as a whole, and I think you're well placed to do this because there are a lot of cowboys in crypto who don't know what the hell they're talking about. You're not one of those guys. You've come through a pretty, let's call it, traditional finance background, and you've ended up in crypto, which means you obviously believe in it in the context of fintech. Where do you kind of see the world of fintech going as a general question? What do you think the trends are? What do you think it'll look like in 5 years' time? Anything around that?
Oh, definitely. So I've got loads of opinions on this. Firstly, I think if you look at banks today, I mean, banking is essential, right? But banks aren't. So banks as we know them today, they are going extinct. I'm surprised that they're still around. In the next 5 years, the bank that we know, the bank that we interact with is going to be very different. So the challenger banks that you've seen in the US and the UK, they've made a really big impact. They've really damaged some of the bigger banks. And I think you're going to see that in emerging markets. And also, I think you're seeing a lot of smaller fintechs, which are very specialized. So they focus on particular verticals within whether it be investing or wealth management or brokerage or the actual banking side of things. There's different fintechs in each different field. And they are doing incredible things, and they can provide a service in that field better than a kind of one-stop shop. So I think you're going to see integration between fintechs continue. And I mean, open banking is another thing which kind of is going to lead to all of this, right? In the UK, you've got most banks, they have to provide an API, right? Not most banks, every e-money institution, they have to provide an API, which means that money all of a sudden can be a little smarter, right? So your app, Revix's app could interact directly with the bank. You can, process payments. You can do all these things automatically using third-party apps, which means that all of a sudden banking becomes a lot more accessible and fintechs can integrate with banks a lot better. In South Africa, there's some APIs with banks, but we are quite far behind on that front. So I think that open banking side of things is another big sort of step forward in the space. So fintech's going to get much bigger from where it is now. It's going to be huge. I do see it kind of, the fintech space really disrupting every area of banking. Also see fintech becoming a lot more automated across the board. I mean, you've got AI, which is going to be ingrained in everything that we do. You've got blockchain, which is going to be playing a bigger role going forward. I think a lot of people don't quite understand sort of the impact that blockchain will have. We're sort of still in the 95 days of like how the internet was emerging, all the rest, and there's weird cryptocurrencies with weird names emerging, and people are misallocating capital and all the rest. But you are seeing this, big brain drain from other industries into fintech and into crypto in particular. And I do think that this is, that's like the one of the big markers of an industry that's growing really quickly. So a more automated financial system, a smarter financial system, that's all coming about through fintech. So there's going to be a lot of disruption in the future, and the fintechs like Revix are at the heart of this.
So out of all of that, there's open banking there's AI, there's automated finance, as you put it, which I love, and there's crypto, there's a bunch of other things. You probably had a number of things you could have gone into. Out of those things, why did you choose the crypto element? And I fully acknowledge that Revix can totally combine everything that you just spoke about. It totally can, and it probably will combine all of those things. But why did you choose to center in your sort of attention out of all of those themes and trends that you've probably been tracking for a while, given your passion? Why crypto? Why did you go into this space out of those things?
Because it's the area that's got the biggest brain drain. As I just mentioned now, you are seeing such smart people leave the world of finance, the world of even academia to go into crypto. And it's just, in my mind, like exactly the same as what happened in the 2000s with the internet boom. And that doesn't generally happen without some big impact coming afterwards, right? And you're seeing loads of applications being built. And to me, that was just kind of like, well, this is definitely an asset class that's going to grow. But having said that, Revix of today is going to be different to the Revix of tomorrow. Revix of tomorrow is going to offer a full suite of investment products. So when I was initially thinking of Revix and thinking about, okay, right, so what do I want this platform to offer? Because Revix stands for revolutionary investment experience. For me, I was like, well, I want to be able to offer something to the world that is accessible. And again, we talk about a lot of investing platforms that are accessible, right? We're like, oh no, maybe you've got easy equities, or you've got another platform, Robinhood, etc. And we go like, that's easy. But no, a lot of people still don't understand. Like, we're in a privileged position, like, where you understand what an order book is, you understand what a limit order is, what a market order is, OTC, GTF. Like, there's all this jargon with finance and investing that keeps people out of the space. And if you're looking at what we're looking at doing, is we don't want any of that jargon. Like, you literally are entering a jargon-free platform. The entire investing experience is the eighth wonder of the world. If you're able to invest effectively and grow your wealth, like, you can achieve your dreams. Like, that's like one of the biggest things. Like, people always go like, I want to, buy a dream home. I want to buy that dream car, go on that dream vacation. That generally comes about through investing. And a lot of people don't enter the investing space because they're intimidated, and they've been told, and this is like something that started in the 90s, that, listen, you can't manage your own money. And with us, we're actively trying to make people think differently. We're saying, no, you are smart enough to manage your own money. And it starts with you managing your own money and actually taking accountability for that. So our mission at Revix is to enable everyday people to become their own wealth manager. And that's our long-term vision within the business. So yeah, I think I've gone a little bit off topic, but the point being is that—
No, I love it. I love it. It makes a lot of sense. It's be your own bank. It's be your own investment manager. It's do it in a way that is sensible and not reckless, and do it with people that can actually support you on this journey and that are not giving you opaque fees. I mean, I love it. I really do understand it. On that, are there any crypto projects specifically that you think are particularly exciting or interesting? And the reason why I ask that is because you seem to approach this with a pretty sensible viewpoint. You're not the guy going, hey, let's do a quick little ICO and make a quick buck off everyone and then disappear off into the sunset. You're building the infrastructure. You're building software that's actually pretty centralized to facilitate decentralized transactions. You're not trying to do anything that's particularly crazy. It's really thought through, sophisticated, and for the long term. But you're doing it initially to trade these pretty fluent and volatile assets. But you must keep an eye on the crypto markets. And that's why I'm interested, like, are there any projects, and I call them projects because that's what these things are. Bitcoin is a project, it's an experiment. Ethereum is a project, it's an experiment. I mean, I believe in them, but they're still experiments. Are there any projects that you think are particularly interesting in the crypto space specifically at the moment, beyond Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, etc.?
Yes, there's loads, right? But one of my favorite is Polkadot. So just a bit of inside information here. So Polkadot's a top 10 cryptocurrency, similar to Ethereum in many respects, but something that's quite unique, well, something from our perspective that we've seen that's quite unique is because Ethereum has been quite expensive to use. Like, the network's pretty congested, which means you have to pay high gas fees. It means that just to interact with the network becomes it's prohibitive at this point in time, certainly for like menial tasks. And Polkadot's got faster transaction processing times. And what this has meant is that we're part of the Berkeley Blockchain Accelerator. And you've got so many of these projects. I'm talking about 80 to 90% of the projects that we're working with. Again, we like Aircom is like the stupid startup there, because you're working with these guys that have like a layer 2 scaling solution, certainly stuff like above my pay grade. But they're building all these really interesting projects, and almost every single one of them are using Polkadot. So just seeing that, and you're talking about one of the most prestigious universities in the world, certainly one of the most prestigious accelerators in the world, and just seeing this many companies and startups, working on this, for me, I was like, oh, this is definitely one to watch. So Polkadot's one. Another top cryptocurrency is Chainlink. So, we're talking about DeFi and how decentralized finance is going to be this really big thing. And, one thing that you can currently do with DeFi is essentially an automated money market. So you can lend some of your cryptocurrency to this protocol called Compound, and you can earn interest, right? And you can earn, depending on the cryptocurrency that you're lending, you can earn between 5 to 15% a year. So, Compound is obviously incredibly interesting in and of itself, but you need data. You need to be able to, with many of these projects, you need external data to come in. And if you think about this, if you've got a decentralized protocol that is getting information, like, it's so easy to disrupt that information. So you need some like validator for that information. And that's where the likes of Chainlink comes in, where they incentivize nodes to provide information that's correct. So I find that fascinating. So, between, I guess there's three there. There's Compound, Polkadot, and Chainlink. I'm fascinated by them all.
Yeah, and it's, Polkadot, I was involved right in the very early days with Polkadot, and they've stood the test of time as well. I mean, in crypto, the amount of years they've been around is like eons in crypto. Same thing with Chainlink. They've been around for a long time, since the last boom and bust cycle. What's interesting about Compound, just an interesting thing, Compound, Aave, these are the big lending protocols. They seem to have weathered this recent correction extremely well. They've almost shown like an anti-fragility. They've almost been like, hey, we're kicking ass. Oh, and everything falls down around us and we actually just get stronger, which has been amazing to watch. I think this crash has been one of the best things that could have happened for those two big lending protocols. It's been fascinating to watch. And I've actually been trying to get the CEO and founder of Aave on the show for a while. I will get him on. Very impressive dude.
Yeah.
Sean, I didn't even realize the time. I'm actually pretty conscious that we don't have that much time left. I want to flip to some quicker, sort of more rapid fire questions without long explanations. In the broader fintech space, what are some projects that you're watching with excitement? That don't have to be crypto, just in the broader fintech space. Maybe name one or two, maybe three.
Right. So one company that we work very closely with is a company called 21 Finance. They're based in Liechtenstein. What they are doing is they're essentially providing a marketplace to banks or in various financial intermediaries. And once you get connected to this marketplace, any financial product that gets put onto this marketplace is tradable amongst all the different participants, all the different users of that marketplace. So if you imagine private debt, right, which is a really big market, you have private debts, a whole bunch of, let's say, Woolworths credit card loans. You're able to then sell that as a security in this marketplace to all these other financial intermediaries or financial service providers, and you've made a market for it. So all of a sudden, you're taking these illiquid assets and making them super liquid. So that, to me, is a fascinating project. Something which I think maybe, I don't think a lot of people really know about Plaid, but I mean, Plaid, obviously, they, big unicorn company, like they essentially are like, I guess, the biggest player when it comes to payment processing that you don't know about. Like they are getting to the point of being like a Visa, MasterCard. So I'm watching them very closely. I met the...
Yeah, they are. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, it's quite weird because people that aren't in fintech have probably never heard of Plaid, but they are so big and they are growing so fast and they are just everywhere. And I think they've just done, someone that I really respect says to me, Mike, the plumber always gets paid. That's like his motto. And this is a very, very successful founder. And he builds infrastructure. He builds plumbing. He's like, just build the plumbing. Everybody has to use it. They don't need to know about you. It doesn't have to be sexy, but that's the plumber always gets paid. And I think Plaid, from what I understand, it's one of the best examples of that. Everybody's using them. You don't necessarily know who they are. Again, I'm actually in comms with Keith Grass, who's one of their executives, to try and get him on the show. But everyone wants a piece of them because they're just everywhere. So who's the third one? So we've got 21 Finance, sounds super interesting. We've got Plaid. Who's the third one that you're following at the moment?
Synthetics. I don't know if you've ever heard of Synthetics. So Synthetics.io, yes. So they are looking to take real world assets. This could also be stocks and all the rest, and essentially putting these assets onto a blockchain that then could be traded peer to peer. Again, like you see, all the companies I'm looking at are either payments or financial services or investing. But wow, Synthetics, being able to take assets. So something that we actually offer on the. You notice how I always start a conversation and I just randomly start going off on like a tangent. This is like one of the.
I love it.
One of the things that I have. With one of the products that we have is called Paxos Gold. And essentially what Paxos Gold is all about is a gold bar that is held in a London Brinks vault and then is broken up into 400 tokens. Those 400 tokens are traded on the Ethereum blockchain and it's peer-to-peer. So this is an ERC20 token that you can buy into and it's available through Revix. Now, what Synthetics is doing is essentially taking that exact same model and just applying it to almost everything. So whether it be some complicated derivative that exists out there, or just an Amazon share or Netflix share, all of a sudden you don't have this trading on centralized exchanges necessarily. It could be traded peer to peer, and this to me is just like, wow, this is a huge opportunity. I mean, this is definitely where finance will go. It's just sort of when and how.
Yeah, Synthetics is great. I was lucky enough to because Kane, the founder, lives in well, I don't know if he lives in Sydney, but he was in Sydney. And I was at Australia Blockchain Week a little while ago, and I actually was in quite a small kind of one-on-one interview type thing with Kane, and it was fascinating. I mean, they've been through they're very smart, but they've also done some very interesting stuff in terms of the governance and how they've actually built and run the organization. They've been through some serious learnings in terms of building some DAOs and what have you. So a big name, very exciting to watch. And it's cool that they're on, I live in Australia now. They're sort of on my doorstep. It was very cool listening to them. Cool, Sean. So I'm going to run through some rapid fire questions now because I'm conscious of time and I don't like to run over time. So the first one is just, you've mentioned that you're pretty high intensity, that you're not scared of hard work, but your energy is pretty good as well. So do you have any habits or routines that you rely on for more focus or optimal performance?
Yes, routine sets you free. That's my saying. I say this on a daily basis. You need to have a routine. Well, I believe you need to have a routine if you want to function effectively and consistently. I think that's the other side of this. So for me, every single day I will be meditating for a while. Now I'm not the best meditator. And it can be meditating while I'm running on the treadmill, but it's just this point of like, kind of thinking to yourself, right, I want to be present at this point in time. I just want to, feel my heartbeat, be sweating, whatever the story may be. Because I actually, generally speaking, I'll call my meditation running. Like most days I'll go for a run and all of a sudden the business ideas will come, or like, the moments of stillness and calm will come in those at that point in time. So I really do like to kind of, challenge the norms that we have where we say like, no, meditation has to be lying on your back or like sitting up straight or doing that. Like for me, that's not meditation. Running and being just like lost in that moment and being in flow is, one very important thing for me. The other thing is you need to feel challenged on a daily basis, right? So you need to be educating yourself in some area that you're not. And I mean, I do this every single day as well, is you try focus on something that you know nothing about and it's almost out of your comfort zone. So I try to do that on a daily basis. So reading an article about something weird and wonderful, like maybe I'm being infatuated with DeFi, and you start going reading some white papers and all of a sudden it all turns into gibberish. And then that's a challenge, right? All of a sudden it's like, no, you need to understand that. And if you can't understand that, why? Like, where's your shortcoming? So I try to do that on a regular basis. And that also that keeps you humble because you realize, and I love this, by the way, it's my best feeling. We've got some really smart people at Revix. I'm sure, Mike, you get this loads at Nona. But when you're sitting in a room, whether it be with devs, whether it be with product owners, you name it, and they start talking about things and you're just like, wow, I feel dumb. And that moment of just feeling dumb at that point in time, it's the best feeling in the world because you've hired the right sort of people to be in the room. So that's that sort of humility.
There's so much knowledge in that. I mean, I quote Paul Galates in almost every single podcast I do. He was my second guest. And I'm going to tell you what he told me, because it's just such great wisdom, is that his mentor, and I don't know if you know who Paul Galates is, but he's founded Yuppie Chef. Yuppie Chef has just sold for nearly R500 million. He's now the founder of Names and Faces. He's a pretty decent entrepreneur and a lovely guy. And his mentor said to him, Paul, you've only got two jobs as a CEO or founder. One is set the vision and bring people along with you, right? So sell that dream, make people believe in it. It's got to be authentic. The other job is make sure you're never the smartest person in the room. And that's what you're speaking about. And for me, it's pretty easy because I work with ludicrously smart people and I'm never the smartest person in the room. But it's true. It's a great feeling, unless you have an ego that's bigger than the room, to sit around the people that you've managed to bring together in a way that actually care about something and go, wow, like these people are just on another level. I don't even pretend to understand what's going on here, but that's actually not my job. My job is to lead and optimize and create the environment for them to do the best work and to set the vision so that what they're doing is part of a bigger purpose. And really resonate with everything you just said there. And I do meditate a lot in the traditional way, but I also recognize what you're saying. My thing is mountain biking. I'm a very passionate mountain biker, and I get that meditation value when I'm riding my bike. My brain stops. I become still. I have ideas because I'm quite ADD. So for me, if I sit in meditation, my mind just goes. And it's still useful for me. But when I'm on my bike and I'm pushing really hard, which is the same as running, my brain slows down a bit. It's the only way I can actually do it. So I fully relate to what you're saying. Next question. What scares you in business?
A lot. Running out of money. Running out of cash is my number one concern. And it's the one thing I promised my team and my investors that I would be on top of, because it's the one thing I feel like you can control. I mean, you can obviously know that you're running out of money and you can do something about it and you can downscale and you can do a whole bunch of things. But yeah, that's my number one concern, definitely.
What content are you consuming currently?
I'm reading about 3 books very slowly. Thinking Fast and Slow is one book that I've really got into.
On Newport. Yeah, very good.
This is another one. This high growth. I'm going to try grab it and pull it over here. Here we go. This high growth. I don't know if you're an entrepreneur reading this. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, I can. Yeah,
it's a bit of a Bible. But that's another book that I'm reading at this point in time. And then the book that I've just started is Anti-Fragile from Nassim Taleb.
It's a brilliant book. What's the last book you read cover to cover?
The last book I read cover to cover, I think Malcolm Gladwell, Blink.
Great book.
Yeah.
What is something that you're doing in the next 7 days to improve yourself or your craft?
In the next 7 days, improving myself or my craft. I'm spending between 20 to 30 minutes every single day solely focused on strategy, which is something that I have not been doing up until today, really. So that's something as a leader I think I need to do.
I'm going to break my own rules here because I normally don't ask questions on these questions, but I'm actually giving a keynote next week on strategy in an age of remote. And I won't give you the backstory. I'll just ask you the question. When you say you're spending a day on strategy, what does that mean? What are you actually going to be doing? Like, what does it mean for you to spend a day on strategy? Talk me through what that's actually going to look like.
It's visualizing what Revix looks like in 2 years' time, setting that vision sort of in motion and having that on paper, and then working back from there saying, okay, right, how do I achieve that? That's, for me, what I see strategy as.
I love it. Nice and succinct. Really valuable. Cool, Sean. Look, we spoke about a lot of stuff today, which is great. I love bouncing around. I love the energy. I love your passion. We spoke about a lot. We touched on a lot. If there was one thing that you could have the listeners leave with, what would that one thing be from today?
I don't even think this will be from today necessarily, but naturally everyone gets told this. I'm just going to say this again. When you start a business, you need grit, obviously, right? So that's a given. The other thing I think you need to go into a business understanding is that you don't get this perfect startup experience, right? I think so many people start a business and they're like, oh, we're doing this wrong. Or like, we're doing this illegal. Or like, we have to be reporting and doing all these things. Of course, now you don't want to be breaking the law and doing things illegally. But, if you have to have the perfect startup that, it has, you immediately apply to regulators and you wait for their feedback and you do everything by the book, I promise you're going to be waiting a very, very long time. You sort of have to start with there's going to be mistakes. And, you have to obviously be cognizant of what those mistakes are and fix them over time. But I do feel that, you are going to be make a lot of errors early on in the business. So just being cognizant of that, as long as you're moving forward, you don't need perfect.
I love that. Someone told me a long time ago that almost always in a young business and a startup, any decision is better than no decision because you can fix it, but make the decision and move. So I love what you're saying there. Sean, it's been super energizing and inspiring talking to you, man. I love the energy. I love what you guys are doing. Certainly a startup to follow, guys. It's really worth following Sean and Revix. Sean, do you like to be contacted or followed? And if you do, how can the listeners best contact or follow you?
Head over to LinkedIn and pop me a message there. I feel like this LinkedIn. I'm unfortunately not on Twitter all that much.
You got to do it. You got to do it. LinkedIn's necessary, whether you hate it or not. It's necessary, right?
Yeah, I just felt like I was 50 there or 60. No offense to every listening as I say that. I just feel like I'm a lot older now.
But you're not. You're 29 and a quarter. So
29 and a quarter,
good.
yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Sean, it's been great. Thank you so much for making the time. Really enjoyed it. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the shares. And we'll certainly keep following you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. I loved it.
Cool. And to the listeners, thanks for listening to the How to Be Moderately Successful podcast. I hope you got some value today with Sean from Revix. I certainly did. So many things to pick from there. But I think if I had to pick one, I'm actually just going to echo what he said right at the end, which is, this shit is not easy and it's not perfect. It's not going to look pretty. And I think the trick with building businesses is just to be comfortable in that discomfort, to be okay with things not being perfect, but carrying on regardless. So I love that. A great reminder. As a reminder, if you have a fintech project that you'd like to accelerate with a partner that will take care of your design and development to allow you to focus on your area of genius, we'd love to help you. Head over to nona.digital to book a call with one of our principals or follow any of the contacts in the show notes. I'll be back next week with another episode to help you build better businesses, better fintech products, and a better you.